Dr. Bean to talk about the Juliana Eimear lecture.
Thank you, Your Eminence, and welcome to all of you yet again to another wonderful day of Conclave 2023. My wife, Dr. Juliana Eimear, who served as a subdeacon for the parish of St. Michael's and the Archdiocese of Wisconsin, died very suddenly in August of 2016. And this was an extraordinary blow, not just to me personally and to the people who knew and loved her, but to the St. Michael's community and to the AJC as a whole. However, in that extremely dark time, it was precisely to the community of the AJC that I turned for support and consolation. And I honestly don't know that I would have gotten through that terrible period without the support of the people in the AJC, some of whom are in this room right now, and you know who you are. But it was decided to name a memorial lecture for Juliana because she had such profound and wide-ranging interests that she shared at the conclaves she attended, in the talks that she gave, in the papers that she wrote. Many of these had to do with female mystics, with our female saints, and with the idea of the divine feminine, and as was her sort of key project, the divine neuter, and challenging many of the preconceived notions and built-in prejudices of the tradition that we've inherited. And so we've always tried to do something for her memorial lecture that fits in with her interests and her themes. And I can't think of anything that fits in quite as well with who she was as a person, what her interests were, and what it was that she was about in the AJC than talking about somebody like Brigid, especially from a broader perspective. I always love to share the one story about Juliana, which is when she first was considering being interested in the AJC. She had attended the Theocletian Rite, which includes the philosophic credo, which is a very long, extensive statement of beliefs. And she said, well, I would never join a church if I couldn't sign on to the statement of beliefs. But maybe the way that I understand these things is different from the way that others understand them. And I want to make sure that that's okay. And we literally sat down and went through each line of that creed. And she says, this is what I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about it in this context. I'm thinking about it through this lens. And at each line I went, that's phenomenal. That's fantastic. That's amazing. And we got to the very end, and it was at that point that she says, okay, yeah, this is where I can find a home. And the fact that we've had people of so many diverse faith backgrounds be part of the AJC is one of the things that meant so much to Juliana. So I think it's fantastic that we're continuing the tradition of her work and her research, and having a moment at Conclave to give some thought to her. So thank you, Your Eminence, for continuing that tradition. With that, I'll turn it back to you.
Originally, when we had mapped it out, it was Bishop Scott's idea to do a talk on saints. And so I bounced that idea around to our folks who are better at ideas than I am. Namely Reverend Jonathan Stewart, who hosts our podcast, Talk Gnosis. And he suggested that we widen it out to saints, demigods, and intercessors, because it has that kind of broad spectrum for which we're known. And then he immediately said, and if you do that, I'll do a talk on St. Brigid. And I started chewing on it, and Jonathan, we have more people coming in. Jonathan is for lack of a less anachronistic phrase or ancient phrase, perhaps, a dutiful son of Holy Mother Church. And I got chewing on it, and I came back to him and I said, can you possibly put that talk on hold? Because I think I know somebody who is more positioned ideally to give that talk. And it was Eimear that came to mind. And so I approached her about it. And I think the reasons for doing so will be, if it isn't already obvious now, it'll be obvious by the end of our time. Eimear is the chosen chief of the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids, of which I am a member, and we have several members here, and lives in Kilkenny, Ireland. She has a private practice as a counseling psychologist, and her interests in Druidry and psychology have led her to act as a celebrant, helping people to design and enact meaningful rites of passage. She is licensed to perform weddings in the Republic of Ireland and can also offer non-legal ceremonies. She has a deep love of the ancient Irish tales and has a passion for storytelling. She brings the old tales to new audiences, and while remaining faithful to the stories, often examines them from new perspectives so that listeners experience them as fresh and relevant. She particularly enjoys showing people the sacred sites of Ireland and telling the ancient tales right where they happened. Eimear is also a priest dedicated to Danu in the Fellowship of Isis and an archdruidess in the Druid clan of Dana and a member of the Noble Order of Tara. And so it should be obvious that she immediately came to mind for Brigid, particularly because not only is she the chosen chief of Obad, she is a pagan herself, and she grew up in Ireland. She speaks Gaelic, and she grew up in and around the church, and that unique combination of circumstances. I just had to tell Jonathan to take a back seat, and once he heard what I had planned, he wholeheartedly agreed. So with that, Eimear, I turn it over to you. Welcome.
I hope Jonathan really is okay with this.
He really is.
I am innocent. I see William has put in the chat, not illegal ceremonies. We affectionately call them legal and illegal, just for a bit of fun. So given that I'm with a band of irreverent heretics, are you a reverent heretic or an irreverent? I don't know which it is. Or you
Depends
take
who we're talking to.
Seriously. Anyway, it's just lovely to be here. Forgive the hoarseness. I did a wedding yesterday, a legal one, and lost my voice and went into a fit of coughing. So let's hope I don't do that. So it's just so lovely to be here. Yes, as Sean says, I come from a very, very strong Roman Catholic background. So immersed in it, having to go to Mass every evening, particularly during long summer evenings, just like the one I'm looking at out now, which I absolutely hated. So I was never religious. I was an agnostic from the time I was 9. And which is very, very young, having never been religious even before that. So Druidry was discovering that path for my own landscape was an absolute lifeline, and finding the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids as my spiritual home, but also like my tribe, a family, and a place where I belong. So it's been very, very important to me. And little did I ever think that I would be their chosen chief when I signed up, nor even when I was asked. It didn't seem a sensible thing to do. But anyway, here I am. So talking about Brigid, in Ireland, you cannot avoid her. This is the first year, 2023, where she now has her own national holiday. And that is all that from now on will be the first Monday in February. Now, Lá Éile Bhríde, Brigid's Day is celebrated on the 1st of February, but it'll be on the nearest Monday. So this year it was on the 6th of February. There's been a lot of petitioning over the years to get her honoured, as she is a really, really important saint. Anyway, I will... so you cannot avoid her. And even the most agnostic and secular of people have a fascination with Brigid. The stories about her not so many stories as her as goddess, but I'm going to tell you one as a goddess. It's based on Philip Carr-Gomm's one, and I've woven in other strands into it myself. Lots of wonderful stories, like the one that Sean told about her as a saint, but all of those you'll find have pre-Christian origins, that the hints are already there. So for Brigid to have survived, I mean, she was a goddess and she was an ancient one. She could never have been laid aside. So for anyone who was bringing in another worldview, like the early Christians, I'm not talking about the Roman, I'm not talking about St. Patrick, but the earlier ones would have welcomed her and her importance and seen how important she is to the people of Ireland and the land and the landscape. You know, so many wells are dedicated to her and the power of her healing, etc. So let me start with the story. Iwad Sachan Amshir Sachir Shah. Long, long ago in this land, at a time only remembered by the stones, she, the self-generating mother, cosmic deity, she who was the sun driving her chariot across the sky each day and dying beyond the edge of the world each evening, renewing herself each dawn. It was she who gave birth to the moon and the stars. It was she who was the white cow goddess of the Milky Way, and her milk was the sacred food of life. She was, and still is, Nyart Andawan, the earth's life force. It was she who gave birth to the hills and the valleys. She who was Bryn na Crinne, the womb of the universe. It was she who was Curran na Baha, the cauldron of all life. The great queen, the great mother. Her name was Brigid, meaning exalted one. Also known as Bro Sage, the fiery arrow. And it was Brigid who was on Tidergawali, either on Durgatas, Agus and Solace. She was the intermediary between darkness and light. She was on Tidergawali, either on Gira, Agus and Saura. She was the intermediary between winter and summer. Brigid it is who maintains the integrity of the cycle of life. Baha, Bos, Agus Afre, life, death, and rebirth. At the time of the Tuatha De Danann, those people who occupied the land of Ireland before the Celts arrived, Undaya, the good god, Uki Olór, he was the father of the gods and goddesses of Ireland. And it was he who had a vast cauldron so big that whole worlds could be stirred within its depths. And he had carved a great spoon and he would stir the cauldron. And for fun, he would place all his children in it. And he would swing his spoon this way and that, and all around the world and the cosmos. One night, when lightning streaked the sky and lit up all the heavens, a daughter was born to Undaya. Some say the identity of her mother was unknown, but we know her mother was Brigid, the self-generating mother. Bryn na Crinne, Curra Ilabaha, Brigid, the exalted one. And when the baby came for Brigid's womb, she emerged with flowing golden red hair and beautiful hazel eyes, strong arms and limbs, and a spirit both as fiery as the hottest fire and a wisdom as deep as the deepest ocean. There were times when she turned her head this way, she appeared as a beautiful maiden, and at other times, if she turned the other way, she appeared as a Cailleach, an ugly old woman. And Undaya, as soon as he laid eyes on his baby girl, he knew her name immediately. I will call you Brigid, after the exalted one. I can see in you her fiery spirit and deep wisdom. Brigid was born at springtime, a time when the first shoots begin to emerge up through the earth's surface. After a long, cold winter, and the snowdrops, the plurinishnachta, the first flowers to arrive, are dedicated to her. And Brigid, the little girl, grew from strength to strength, and with each passing day, and soon she grew up to be a beautiful young woman, a goddess. One day she said to her father, "Father, please let me go out into the world, for I have so much to offer. Look at my brothers and all they do. Oma, he inspires the writings of men and women. And Angus, he opens their heart to love. And Dun, he guides the dying and the dead, their souls to the Inshivanaha, the sacred isles, the blessed isles. I too have so much to give. I too can inspire the hearts of all those who dwell on earth." And I, her father, replied, "Well, indeed, your brother has taught the art of writing and literature, but you must teach them to go deeper with their words, how to find the song of their souls. Teach them how to sing from their hearts. Introduce the art of poetry into the world." Oh, and this so pleased Brigid, for she loved music and loved the magic of words and loved to give them free range and to watch as they danced and played in the air around her. But she wanted more. She knew she had more to give. "Let me do more," she said to her father. "Very well," he said. "Teach them how to give birth, not only to poetry, but also to themselves. Teach them the arts of the midwife. Show them how to give birth not only to the beauty of language, but to the beauty of their own bodies. Become the goddess of birth, as your brother Dun is the god of death." And this too pleased Brigid, and she smiled. And she said, "But father, I have even more to give. There is a fire in my heart, and there is a fire in my very being. I have so much to offer the earth and her beings." "Well then," said her father, "take care of their ills. Bring healing to the sickness of their bodies, their souls, and their minds. Become the goddess of healing." And so it was that Brigid became the goddess of poets, midwives, and healers. And she began to move around the earth, touching people's heart with her imas, her inspiration, and her love, and touching their bodies and their souls and their minds with her healing energy. One day, as she was passing the forge of her brother Gwivnu, the smith god, she stood in the doorway of his forge, mesmerized by the flames that raged in his furnace. And with each beat of his great hammer on the sword that he was forging, she felt a surge in her heart. She too longed to wield a sword, to wield a hammer and forge beauty on the sword. Gwivnu, as he saw her, turned to her and he smiled. And seeing her, he held out his hammer to her, saying, "Goddess of the healing well, you are also goddess of the raging fire. No healing may come without the fire of life. No beauty without the well of suffering and rebirth. Come, take my hammer, forge the sword, make new the world each day." And with that, Brigid took the hammer and she forged the sword. However, she did not wield it, as she is also the goddess of peace. It is she who inspires people to forge their path from the strength of fire, the strength of water, the strength of earth, the strength of air. And that is how Brigid became the goddess of fire and water, flame and well, the goddess of poets, the goddess of healers and midwives, and the goddess of all smiths. Shine.
I think we're all pagan now. Just thought I'd throw that in.
Oh, looking for converts all the time. Actually, we don't proselytize. Druids don't do that. So that was the joke. So according to the Carmina Delica, which is a collection by, what's his name? I forgot. I have it here. Alexander Carmichael. That's right. So he collected lots of prayers, etc., and charms in Scotland, but a lot of them would also be very, very much relevant to Ireland today. And according to the Carmina Delica, this is Brigid the Sage, is said to preside over different seasons of the year. And you'll see the seeds of that in the story. And in Scotland, some people refer to the month of January or December as An Mí Marbh, the dead month. And there's also a phrase, na trí Míana Marbh, the 3 dead months, or Roithe Marbh, the dead quarter, referring to the dead months of winter where all of nature is asleep. And it said that Brigid, with her white wand, breathes life into the mouth of the dead winter, and to bring him to open his eyes to tears and smiles and the sighs and the laughter of spring. And it said that the venom of the cold trembles for its safety on Brigid's Day and flees for its life on St. Patrick's Day. So there's a saying, Brigid put her finger in the river on the feast day of Brigid, and away went the hatching mother of cold. And then she bathed her palms in the river on the feast day of Patrick. So on the 1st of February in Ireland, women traditionally took the seed of the fire and put it in a sock and went out to pound the earth to awaken the Njart, that life force of the earth, reminding the cold winter earth that spring had come. And they would say, today is the day of bride. The serpent shall come out of the hole. I will not molest the serpent, nor will the serpent molest me. And of course, the serpent is the symbol of regeneration and transformation that's said to come out of the depths of the earth and was also referred to as a noble queen. So there's a bit of a weather augury on the 1st day of February. If it is fine, it means the Cailleach is still asleep. Oh no, she's out, sorry. If it's fine, she's out collecting firewood, which is a portent of bad weather to come. If it's bad, it means she's still asleep and there is good weather to come. And then on Brigid's Eve, on the 31st of January, the cloth or a cloak known as Broth Brige is placed outside and left overnight, where Brigid would pass over and bless the broth with her healing spirit. And in the morning, then the dew-soaked cloth or broth was taken into the house. And if it was a big piece, it might be cut up into pieces and shared. And it was used in healing for pregnant women and even sick animals. So I do this every year. I don't have a cloak, a big cloak. So I have a piece of red fabric and I also have a piece of white one. And that goes out. And even when I've been in Africa, I've done it, even though it's a bit strange. And I've shared it with people. And I use that for healing. It's good for me, it's good for headaches. But a lot of it is used for pregnancy and protecting women in childbirth. And there are a lot of associations with Brigid. The first one that I ever knew about was the cross. And I have a selection of crosses here. This is one. Represents, it's like there's meant to be a sun wheel here, the 4 directions. And our RTE, our national television, their logo was the Brigid's cross. Here is one similar to what you'll have on the Aran Islands, that's more woven. I'll say it back that way. Then there's the threefold one, Brigid is also the goddess, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And so crosses will be made around Imbolc time, which is what we give to the season around Brigid, that pagan festival. And they would be put at the doorways or on the doors of outhouses protecting animals. In some traditions, you would take it down, the previous ones down, and maybe burn it. Others, you would keep them. And you might know how long a family was there by the number of Brigid's crosses there were. With time, they would wither, and the idea is that you would crush the rushes into dust, and that was used as healing for animals and people. She's also associated with fire. She is the goddess of fire and water, flame and well. She's associated with wells. The interesting one is that she's associated with fire that doesn't burn. So there are stories about where, so this is the saint, her father was a druid and her mother was a slave. And there's a story that her mother went off to milk some cows, and somebody called to her and said, your house is on fire. And they all looked and they could see the whole house was ablaze, and Brigid was asleep there. So they all ran. And when they got there, the house was intact and Brigid was fine. There's another story. She was with her father, Dúthach, the druid, and her mother, and she was had a ribbon around her head, and it suddenly burst into flame. And the parents went out to protect her. There was no fire and no sign of it. And then there was as the abbess of Kildare, there's the sacred perpetual fire that was guarded by either, they say, 19 nuns, and she was the 20th. And there was always a nun tending to that fire. But that it never produced any ash. It was believed that the ash disappeared every day miraculously. There was the sword. Now, Dúthach, at one point, her father wanted to sell her to the King of Leinster because she was always giving things away. She was incredibly generous. Any butter that was made, she'd be giving that away. She'd be giving away milk. And that was driving her stepmother mad and everybody mad because she was giving away to the poor or anyone who needed it. Anyway, while he went in to negotiate with the King of Leinster, he left her in the chariot with his sword to look after it. Anyway, along comes a leper. And she gives the leper the sword. So the father comes out and he says, where's my sword? And she said, I gave it to a leper. Why did you do that? Well, Christ took it. He said, but it's not my sword. It belongs to the king. Well, if I had the power, I would give all of Leinster to Christ. And the king, so Dúthach had to go back into the king. And he said, well, this girl can be neither bought nor sold. Leave her free. And he actually gave her a sword. And then there's an association with cow. So her father, it's interesting, he wanted to sell her, but he also loved her and was cared for her. He wanted her to be healthy. So he fed her with the milk of a fairy cow. It was a white cow with red ears. And he'd go off into the woods. And these cows with white cows with red ears produced an abundance of milk that no matter how much they were milked, they would produce more. And then the Curragh, where she had her, where her abbey was, that was never tilled. It was only ever used as pasture land because she could never exclude the cattle of her neighbours. Such was her generosity. And one story about her cloak was that she wanted to found a monastery. So she went to the King of Leinster and asking for some land. And he said, no, I have none. I'm not giving it to you now. Go away. And she said, look, just give me a little bit of land, just that little piece that my cloak will cover. And to humor her, he said yes. So he got her, she got her sisters. Now, sisters, each of you take, there's no corner on a cloak, by the way, but anyway, take part of the edge and begin to walk. And the cloak expanded and it spread over what's known as the Curragh today. There's a lovely story, which I like. St. Brendan the Navigator, he's down in Kerry. He came up to visit her and they went out walking and it started to rain. And when they came back, their cloaks were very wet. So they came into Brigid's house and there was a sunbeam shining through the window and she just elegantly lays her cloak over the sunbeam to dry. So St. Brendan is absolutely amazed at this. And he tries it. Of course, the cloak falls to the ground. And she says, try again. And it did it again. It fell to the ground. The third time, he succeeded. And then, like I mentioned, the cloak is that healing cloak. And now there's a huge interest in Broth Brigid. People are making cloaks. In Kilkenny here, there's a project where women have been getting together, making panels to put on this cloak. All over the country, there's such an interest in this. And the magic and the healing and the creativity that's associated with it, the artwork that goes into it is quite beautiful. She's also associated with the oak tree. And so Kildare, where her abbey was, means the Church of the Oak. She built her first abbey or little oratory was under an oak tree. And Dara was also known, the churches were all wooden and they would have been built with oak. So oak was always associated with the early Christian churches. And I mentioned the snowdrop in the story is, it's always associated with Brigid. You know, when the first snowdrops come up, it's like, spring is on its way. But an interesting thing, I only discovered this recently, that you can make an ointment from the bulbs for treating frostbite and chilblains. So earlier when I was talking about when the Carmen and Gadelica with those 3 dead months, that she breathes life into the mouth of winter, who doesn't like that because wants to stay cold. And yet the bulb of the snowdrop is used as a treatment for, traditionally, frostbite and chilblains. A dandelion is also, because dandelion is, I take it you have them in Canada, well, we're talking worldwide here, is a great, great healing herb. It's a diuretic. It's an amazing, even metaphysically, when you look at dandelions, you can mow them and mow them and mow them. They will go lower and lower the next time. They come back. And they are, it's associated with Brigid, the travellers, our nomads here in Ireland, they call Brigid Gidge, and they have a story about how the dandelion came to be. So the flower represents the sun, and that's the chariot of the ancient goddess going across the sky. She created the moon, and then the dandelion clock represents the moon. And also, which is interesting, a bell. So she was given a bell that was forged by St. Gildas of Glastonbury. And she went to visit Glastonbury, and there in the abbey grounds, there is a chapel there. And there's an image of Brigid there. So when she was there, she left behind a few things: her hood, her food bag, her rosary, her embroidery kit, and her bell. All the others were destroyed. And Brigid's bell is now in the British Museum. So Brigid, Brigantia, Bridie, Brige, Bryant is her name in Wales. So I was Christopher Hughes, who's a member of the order. He's also the Archdruid of the Anglesey Order of Druids. He would talk about the rivers that are dedicated to Bryant. So she's all over Europe, and she's also, so there's a Celtic tribe, the Brigantes, dedicated to, or called after Brigid. And not only is she in Britain, but wait a second, I'm looking for, so I was in New Orleans in 2019. Am I making sense here? Because it's very hard.
Oh yeah, no, this is great.
I was in New Orleans at our the Gulf Coast OBOD gathering in 2019 with Pat Booker, and we discovered that there is a great cult to Maman Brigid, who is a voodoo Loa. And she was brought over, St. Brigid was brought over by the indentured servants when they were brought to Louisiana. And then they would have mixed with with African slaves and became part of voodoo. So within the voodoo tradition, both in New Orleans and in, say, Haiti, if you're Catholic, you're probably voodoo. If you're Protestant, you're not. And I remember going to the Voodoo Museum in New Orleans and looking at the altar, and it looks like full of graven images, certainly not Protestant, very Catholic. St. Patrick is the head, Dambala is his name. There's Maman Brigid, there's St. Martin, there's Mother Mary. So they're all the altar are statues of Christian saints. And what they are Loa. They're the Christian face of the Voodoo Loa. And we went to I can't remember the woman's name. She's a voodoo priestess, and we heard about Mama Brigid, and how you can make an offering to her is go to the graveyard and visit the graveyard of the oldest woman and perform a ritual. Anyway, Pat wrote this poem, and I think it's brilliant. So it just shows how, that's the woman. Thank you, Pat. Pat's here. She's down there. I can't see her. She's there. Maman Brigitte Writes Home by Pat Booker. You want to honor me? Oh, really? Well, then seek out the holy well. Seek out the shady cloister, and then get your ass to a graveyard. Find the oldest tomb wherein a woman lies. Light a smoke, or that rum, the type that blisters with hot chilies. Pile 9 stones, puff 9 puffs, spit 9 spits, and listen. I was a goddess once, the first to keen. I forged and healed and stood to pronounce my poems and my judgments. Then I was a saint under new management. In patient prayer I knelt, weaving a cross from simple rushes, and fame for my submission. And then, when they swept away my women, unhappy ones chained with indentures, I moved overseas and laboured alongside them, sweating in the febrile swamp. How could I not go? They needed me. For home, for healing, for comfort, for magic. I met new friends. I made new friends, met new gods, began my new career. And up I rose from servitude. I became a protector of women, a guardian of the dead, fishing souls from mystic waters and whispering their names. I married a fine man with a big voice and a tall hat, a baron no less, on a Saturday night. And I learned to cuss and dance. I am Brigid, bride, Maman Brigitte. I am goddess, saint, and Loa. My signs are flame and cross and vev. I have been with you through changing times and lands and fates. I am writing to remind you. I am waiting for a letter back. So thank you, Pat, who's here someplace. I just love that. It's just brilliant.
That was marvelous. I was going to say, unbeknownst to you, but known to us, that we opened Conclave with a talk on Saint Expedite, a very popular Catholic and Voodoo saint. And so there was also some discussion of the man with the tall hat. And
yes, Samedi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm just saying interesting comments. Yes. Thank you. I think thanks to Pat. It's just brilliant. Really, really clever. So there's I have another one, another OBOD member, Brigid of Ruth Marshall. She's a storyteller. She compiled this as a poem for when she's teaching children about Brigid. So Brigid of the Oak. Brigid was a helpful child at home and in the fields. Whenever she was milking, the cows increased their yields. Was it because she sang to them or loved the cows so well? Or because her hands worked miracles? Well, who of us can tell? When she was making butter, there was more than half again. And when she set 5 loaves to bake, what came out of the oven was 10. Plenty for all when Brigid cooked or when she brewed the beer. No one had to go without. When Brigid prayed, no fear. Her father found it all too much when she gave away his stuff, his sword, his food, his money. He'd had more than quite enough. Decided he will make her wed. Her beauty was renowned. But then he found a suitor well. Brigid simply frowned. I'd rather pluck out my own eye from out of my own face than marry any man you choose. That would be a disgrace. I'll be a holy woman, dedicate my days to God, to good. I'll build a church beneath the oaks and share all of my food. I'll ask the king for land for this, and if he won't agree, I'll lay my cloak on the ground, and then we'll see. The hills will sound with blessings, the earth itself rejoice, and to all in need of comfort, I will raise my voice, to let them know that solace is surely to be found within this heart where burns a fire that warms all around. So Brigid did just as she said, and let that bright flame burn. Her sisters tended by night, and Brigid took her turn to feed the flames of kindness and to keep it ever lit, as we can by remembering Goddess Saint Brigid. Now, when we see a dandelion with its face bright as the sun, we know that spring is here again and new growth has begun. And so today, when spring awakes, we think of her all the more. And when we make a cross of rushes, we hang it by the door, remembering, dear Brigid, of the cattle and the cloak, who showers us with blessings, dearest Brigid of the oak. So, I have another one. Given that you're all holy heretics, I've decided I would just have loads of prayers just to satisfy that need. This is a traditional Irish prayer, which is translated by Kathleen Matthews, another member of the order. Brigid, I take bride as my advocate. Dear to me is Erin. Dear to me each land. Praise be to it. O white flame of Leinster, enlighten the whole land. Chief of Erin's maidens, chief of finest women. Dark the bitter winter, cutting its sharpness. For bride's mantle brings spring to Ireland. Careful, we will shamelessly steal all our praise. Oh, they're all to be shared. No one owns them. Well, I mean, I've what is it? Acknowledged them, but they're just beautiful, aren't they? So there's also a genealogy of Brigid. She's a god of protection, so she would have been used to bless the houses. And bring healing. And this one now, although it's Christian, you can see it has it has pre-Christian origins around a charm for protection. So the genealogy of Brigid, the genealogy of the holy maiden Brigid, radiant flame of gold, noble foster mother of Christ. Brigid, the daughter of Dúil the Brown, son of A, son of Arth, son of Con, son of Crarar, son of Kish, son of Carina, son of Karen. Every day and every night that I say the genealogy of Brigid, I shall not be killed. I shall not be harried. I shall not be put in cell. I shall not be wounded. Neither shall Christ leave me in forgetfulness. I shall not be slain. I shall not be wounded. I shall not be prisoned. I shall not be gashed. I shall not be torn asunder. I shall not be plundered. I shall not be downtrodden. I shall not be stripped. I shall not be rent in two, nor will Christ let me be forgotten. And this is the interesting one. No fire, no sun, no moon shall burn me. No lake, no water, nor sea shall drown me. No arrow of fairy, nor dart of fate shall wound me. And I, under the protection of my Holy Mary and my gentle foster mother, is my beloved Brigid. So we have the pagan and the Christian mixed up in that. Uh, I don't know, Pat. I had the connection problems, so I don't know. Did anyone mention Brigid as LGBT symbol with her companion Darlúdach in her place in Ireland? Yes, there was some notion, some reference to the fact that she had a relationship with one of her nuns. So I need to look that up. But I've heard that said. She was known as Mary's midwife, that she was there at the birth of Christ. She was Christ's foster mother. And they say there was a tradition, I don't know if it's still there, it's that Catholic woman six weeks after the birth of a baby, being this notion being unclean, to be churched and cleansed, and that she did not want, that Mary was very shy about coming to the church, that Brigid went ahead and distracted everybody by doing a dance so that she could go in quietly into the church herself and have her blessing. And Joshua says, I love this. She probably brought sensible gifts to the manger. Well, of course, she brought a casserole and she brought nappies and kind of massaging oil for Mary as well, to help her as well. I don't know how much you could do with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So I like the smell of myrrh and frankincense, I have to say that. And a breast pump, yes. So I think I have, so I'm open to questions now. So we're nearly the hour, aren't we? Yeah. So, well, I haven't been talking for an hour, but if there's any questions or comments or
I've always got plenty. I always come prepared. I'm the guy that talks too much. So the
I'm actually going to interrupt you, Your Eminence,
okay,
just to which I so frequently do. I'm the only one that can keep him from talking endlessly. Just to say thank you, and not just to you, Eimear, for sharing all of that with us, but also speaking as somebody from outside of this tradition. I'm not a member of the order. I am not. This is not my practice. It's wonderful to see you and other members here, and I think it is fantastic that you guys felt welcomed here. So thank you to you guys especially for sharing this time with us. Thank you.
Thank you for your kind words. Lovely. Yeah.
Now I'll go back to ranting. That was marvelous. I think I had mentioned this when we talked originally, but among some of the OBOD members in the AJC, we had quietly referred to OBOD as the AJC of Druidry, because you're serious about what you do, but not serious about yourselves.
That's right.
And it's a marvelous combo. I was just going to mention that as you were going through all these stories of goddess and saint alike, how there's a kind of microcosm of miracles, particularly with the saint, where I think, if you were to throw out the holy texts of Christianity, which, to be honest, some days is probably a pretty good idea, depending on who's reading them, right? That you could probably retell that kind of, all the central things entirely from Brigid's life, right? The fire that burns, that does not consume, is also a kind of image of the burning bush, and the hanging the cloak on sunlight is the walking on water, particularly when there's a Peter there to sink, right? To sink into the water, because they don't quite get it the first time. So and this is something, because I've read, thanks to OBOD and of course thanks to the AJC, I've read a lot of stories from kind of both sides of the equation, but it only occurred to me now as you were telling the stories and the symbolism, just how much stuff where Brigid becomes this kind of compact figure that embraces so many images that you find particularly in Christianity. It's quite remarkable. The other thing I was going to mention is that it's interesting when you consider the symbolism behind holy figures or saints, that they kind of have, if you continue the logic a little bit further, you get some interesting patrons, right? The Saint Francis would be the patron of astral projection, right? So Saint Brigid would be the patron of time travel, because if you take kind of the known history or the hagiography of Saint Brigid, you're dealing with 4th, 5th century type of thing, but she's the foster mother. She's the foster mother of Christ. So that means she might have had a TARDIS to step into to travel back in time. So I would also suggest kind of perhaps even that, and particularly also when you consider fire and water and all the things that goes into, that she would also be a figure or a patron of memory and time. That would be my guess. I'm going to have to try it and see if she answers. But yeah, that was fantastic.
It's interesting the contrast between stories about her and stories about St. Patrick. Hers are all about kindness and softness and generosity. Patrick's are battling with everybody. Now, remember, his two, the two I've read of his, the Confessio and what's the other one? It's gone. 2 books. He was quite an insecure man. Okay, his Latin wasn't good. He was ordained a bishop too early. His colleagues in Britain didn't think he should have been given the crozier, but anyway. And he believed in a very much a wrathful, vengeful, more like an Old Testament God than, the notion of the kindness of Jesus. But the stories are, so Murrochú wrote his hagiography, and it was all about spin, political spin, because with the early Christians who came to Ireland, they would have been very much influenced. There was Brigid and Columba, influenced by the Desert Fathers as opposed to Rome. And after 660, or is it 666, after the Council of Whitby, when the Saxon king he had to decide whether he was going to go with the rule of Rome or the rule of Columkill in Iona. He chose Rome. So Ireland still hadn't, they were still with Iona. And eventually St. Ultan came. But the Romans wanted to have their seat of Rome, the Irish seat of Rome in Armagh. And there were others saying, no, it needs to be in Kildare because we honour Brigid, etc. Anyway, Rome won. So the church today still is in Armagh. And all those stories that Murrochú wrote were about Patrick came back. He went to his slaver Milcú and offered to convert him, to save him, blah, blah, blah. And Milcú said, feck off, excuse me, there's bad swearing. I'm not going to convert. Feck is the Irish word to see, by the way, any of you with bad minds. So he took out his crozier and he pointed it at him and blew him up. I mean, what violence. And then there's another where he was fighting Druids and he blew them to smithereens, and he turned his monks into a herd of deer to protect them. And you think, oh, so he had Druidic skills, but obviously he didn't. But it was to create this great image and this great saint. And it worked. So, for so long, St. Patrick has been the patron saint of Ireland and really, really important. And it's only now that Brigid has, with her kind stories, by the way, she did brew ale that never ended, that there was a vat that kept on giving. So all of her stories are about, the cloak that keeps giving, the cows that keep giving, the beer casks that keep on giving, around healing. And then you just see Joshua compared to the fire that doesn't burn and the sword that is forged but not wielded. There's the sword of justice. There's the sword of the intellect, the sword of light. It isn't always around killing. And I say maybe he was the Darth Vader of Druids. He went to the dark side of Ireland. Perhaps he did. I don't know. But when you read his own stuff, he commits some great sin at 15 for which he remained guilty. So I don't think any confession helped him. He was I don't know what he did at 15 that warranted such guilt. But he was a far humbler man in many ways than he's been puffed up to be. He killed a bee, okay. And actually, Brigid is associated with honey as well. So many things that she's associated with.
So there's almost a subversive kind of quality to a lot of Brigid's stories, that, even though, the system, the world, and the church and all this stuff doesn't agree, or no, we can't do that. That's not a particular thing with the rules, that it just seems to be this way. Like the cloak, for example, which of course is also recalls, some guy feeding people with fish and loaves, right? That, in the cauldron of bran type of fashion, that that Brigid seems to give this nod, okay, have it your way, and her way is the thing that just kind of comes out gently between the cracks. There's a story of which I'm fond, and I entirely believe it, because as a bishop, I am doddering and I get older, and I can't see very well. But there was a story that when she was consecrated, the
Yes, great story.
when she was consecrated, the abbess, the old crotchety bishop came out, and of course the ceremony was held outdoors under the oak, and the Holy Spirit moves in its own fashion, and turned the page to the rubrics for the consecration of a bishop. And the bishop, being out to lunch, as most of us usually are, just kind of went with the ceremony. So not only was Brigid an abbess, she was a duly consecrated bishop, which I think is fantastic.
That was Saint Mel, and when somebody pointed it out to him, hold on a second, you've used the wrong ceremony. You've consecrated her as a bishop, and his response was, "What's done is done." Which was really interesting. He could have done something to, undermine it, but he didn't. He accepted it, and that was it. That was always an interesting one for me. William says Augustine is haunted for stealing a piece of fruit, so maybe that makes a certain amount of sense. Yeah. Okay. So and then the point was that he didn't even want the pears. It was pure meanness. Ah, okay. So, yeah. Anything else was I going to say? It's interesting about her mastery of fire and water, that she had that mastery of, and if you're going to forge a sword, you need fire and water. And as a woman of a certain age, any woman who's gone through menopause, it's all about mastery of fire and water. And I found that really, really important, helping me when I have these power surges that there's this furnace inside me. And I thought, okay, this is what it is. So I'm going to welcome that as a gift, and to be able to gain mastery over fire and water. So that's just my own little old hag, little bit of wisdom to throw in there. Oh, what resources do you recommend for folks who want to learn more about Brigid, particularly about devotion to her? There's Mary Condren. She is an academic. And she's written a lot on, oh dear, now. Look it up. And thank you, Sarah. Old hag wisdom is the best wisdom, of course. Let me see. So Mary Condren, where did I put that in? She's written a book on her. She's done a lot. Now, so that's academic, but you're talking about particularly about devotion to her. What you will find stuff in the Carmen Gadelica, there's prayers about when you're lighting a fire, protecting, and every Imbolc at the 1st of February, if you Google it, there's always look up Women's Spirit Ireland. That's an organization, and they have talks. There's also the Brigidines. They're the Order of Nuns in Kildare, dedicated to, so I'm sure they have a website. And the flame, Brigid's flame, the eternal flame, had been burning until the Henry VIII, with the dissolution of the abbeys. it was extinguished. And about maybe 20 years ago, the sisters in Kildare had a big ceremony to relight it. And my herb teacher, Gina McGarry, was also a Druid. She's a herbalist. So she was asked, there were, I think 19 of them were given a torch. So they processed from Brigid's Well in Kildare to the fire into the church. And they were walking around it, and it's in a pit. And they were chanting, and the chanting stopped when Gina was there, and she was asked to go down and light the fire. And it's been lighting ever since. So reigniting that. And then at Kildare, every Imulk, they have a big ceremony. I haven't been because I'm always busy with my own here. But that they should be able to help. Yeah, there are prayers in the Carmina Gadelica. Yeah. So any other questions?
I have more comments because, of course, I do.
Comments. I was nice to hear. Actually, I have a voice.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, can people hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, thank you for having us. I'm one of the members that has been welcomed in this. Thank you, Eimear, for storytelling this. And with the risk of making this introduction twice, I'm the person who casts the betting in the fire chat. So nice to be able to talk to you for a change.
You are the
person who does the betting in your fire chat.
The bad ink?
The betting.
Oh, you
on the
Gabrielle?
festival. I am.
But I met you in, did I not meet you in Glastonbury?
Yes, you have.
Okay, you sound different. Okay.
I think it's the internet connection.
Ah, okay. Lovely to meet you again.
Lovely to meet you again too. My question was, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering this in any way, shape, or form. You've mentioned in the beginning something Brin Nyakra. I wanted to ask what that means.
What was it did I say? In the story when I first told it?
It was, you were going through various names. And
was I talking about Njart, life force?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Njart, that's the Irish word. It's similar to Nuivri in the Welsh.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's easier to pronounce, by the way.
Thank you.
I was going to say I did have one final kind of comment question, at least for me. I don't know about other folks, but I was going to ask, how does it feel, just simply, as a being Irish yourself and an Irish citizen, to kind of have Brigid so particularly into the kind of consciousness of the culture, particularly that kind of resurgence, because you're also a kind of devotee, and I guess. Perhaps for me, it would feel like if Canada suddenly got, excessively, religious. So I don't know how much, it was kind of already in the water. One of the things I watched, I think it was a member who had posted it. There was there was a in honor of the day, there was an RTE documentary about Brigid, and which I was watching on my commute, and it was really, really good. And then all of a sudden there was a former president of Ireland talking about Brigid, and I'm like, could you imagine Justin Trudeau or somebody, all of a sudden talking about a goddess or a saint? And it was just amazing to me that you would have somebody kind of in that sphere, particularly of that rank, being able to speak passionately and smartly about something that wasn't just an intellectual curiosity, but in the air, I guess.
Well, that's Mary McAleese, I take it. So Mary McAleese is a Catholic, and she, like me, would have been brought up Lo Éile Bríde. Brigid's Day was always celebrated. And she's also a feminist, and she has been quite critical of Rome for their clericalism. She is a lawyer, but she also did a doctorate in theology, so she's well able to give them back their own. And she's an incredibly bright woman, and that was a wonderful documentary, Finding Brigid. And I know a number of the women involved in it in the project.
That mural is something else. You know, the mural that's in the thing has the half and half.
That's right. So that's Melanie Lynch, and that was her brainchild to project that all around. So there was. It's great because it's like it's a balance to Patrick, and it's interesting. I don't like St. Patrick's Day. It's usually, I know it seems to be taken more seriously outside of Ireland than in. Our politicians all feck off and they go to America with bowls of shamrock for whoever. And generally it's a piss up. And then people embarrassingly dressing up as leprechauns and shamrocks. And it's like, ugh, we don't do that because only Americans talk about shamrock, or not shamrocks, leprechauns. And it's a bit cheesy and now we have Brigid, which is very, very different. There's like St. Patrick's Day is it's St. Patrick. He brought Christianity to Ireland, except there were Christians that were here before that. But that it's very secular in its behavior. It's just, a chance to get pissed. And where Brigid's is very, very different. And corned beef, that's American because it's bacon. It was cheaper than beef. So, which was never Irish. Yeah, that I remember Americans saying, you have corned beef and cabbage. I said, no, we only had bacon and cabbage. But anyway, but Brigid has far more. Not that it's puritanical. There's a greater gravitas. There's a greater honoring. And it's joyful without getting drunk. And it's looking at all the wonderful stories, because the stories about Brigid, chocolate potatoes, yes, don't get me started, Pat. That the stories of Brigid they speak more to people. I think people can identify with them more than about the stories about Patrick. Walt Willis writes about how it was when the pubs in Dublin were shut for St. Patrick's Day and only the place serving liquor was the Dublin Dog Show. Wow. And wait a second, not only that, there's Sheila's Day. This is the 18th of March. So she allegedly was Brigid's sister. And I don't know if you have anyone from Newfoundland here, because the Irish, when they went to Newfoundland at the time of the famine, brought Sheila with them. She died out here in the famine. Most people don't know about her. And they honor her in Newfoundland. And even the weather people, again, were bringing, they talk about any snow, if it's a light fall after St. Patrick's Day, is known as Sheila's blush. If it's a heavy fall, it's known as Sheila's brush. And that is the Cailleach's last hurrah at keeping winter before really spring comes. So that St. Patrick, it was a 2-day celebration for Patrick and allegedly his sister. So
I want to hear about the chocolate potatoes before we wrap.
No, just a member of the order gave me one in New Orleans gave me as a gift a chocolate potato that she and her family in the States have every St. Patrick's Day. So it looks like a potato with a bit of soil on it, and you can see the little eyes on it. I was blown away by it. So.
Well, before we break, I do want to issue a blanket forgiveness for all of Ireland for thoroughly thrashing Essex on the cricket pitch today, by 10 wickets. So, you're all forget. Any Irish cricket fans are forgiven in advance.
That doesn't sound like hockey, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I wasn't even, I'm not very sporty, so I didn't even know Ireland was doing anything to anybody with a cricket bat. Even if it's football, I don't know, rugby or whatever. People say, it's the match. I go, what match? Ireland are playing. Who are they playing? So I kind of live in my own little little bubble here.
Well, thank you. That was fantastic. I was thoroughly mesmerized. You are a very gifted storyteller.
Thank you. You're very kind.
And yeah, like I said, we're pretty much all pagan now, which is great because it means I can retire.
Don't you dare.
So, well, it's your show now, and
nobody wants that.
Hey, you know what? My predecessor converted to Buddhism. You know, we're moving in a different direction if I'm retiring into the pagan world. But yes, you are a mesmerizing storyteller, and credit to your craft. I was held fast, and that was beautiful, and so many interchanges of images and symbolism that I think, you know, there's an English storyteller and mythologist by the name of Martin Shaw, who I'm fond of quoting, and he noted that the Old Testament of Irish Christianity is the land. And, you know, and the stories of the Tua de Danann and whatnot, and you know, and it really kind of, you get that kind of, that underground stream, that kind of wellspring, the springing up, right? And so I think, you know, I think this will give everybody here, because we've got a virtual room full of Christians and pagans and Gnostics and folks who don't fit with either of the, you know, any of those labels, a new kind of appreciation and interchange. And if there's one thing that I can say about both my time in the AJC and my time in OVAD, is that kind of diversity of thought and belief and practice enriches the whole. And you're a credit to them and a credit to us. And thank you.
You're very kind. Very kind. It's been lovely, and a lovely audience. You've been very, very welcoming. So I love this from Jeb. Thank you so much for sharing such incredible. It's so nice to be united in heresy with so many beautiful traditions.
Now go rest that voice.
Yeah.
Heretics of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your dogma, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's whiskey time. So with that, we will break for 15 minutes, and we will be returning with Echoes of the Apocalypse with Father John DiGilio on Joachim of Fiore. And of course, Eimear and anybody else, you're welcome to join us. For those who don't have a link, drop me a line in the places in which you know me, and I will forward it on. So everybody take a break for 15 minutes, and we will come back. And Eimear, thank you again. That was fun.
Thank you. I am getting ready. I'm going to Glastonbury, leaving tomorrow night. I'm going for our summer gathering. I'm having a few days beforehand. So I'm going over in my camper van. So thank you so much. You're a really great audience. And thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. And you got me really to work hard on my genning up on Brigid as well. So it's always good to have opportunities like this.
It was great. Thank you.
So, slán go fóill is gur míle maithagah agus go nairí live leis an Conclave. Okay, slán go fóill. That means goodbye for now. Okay.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.